They say money can't buy happiness. But it can, it seems, buy used celebrity teeth, jars of empty air, and prehistoric poop. This isn't just a list of expensive items. It's a catalog of humanity's most glorious financial mistakes, and a 49-point argument that some people should have their credit cards taken away. Permanently. 1. Forget aged cheddar. Someone paid $1,200 for a 400-year-old piece of cheese recovered from a shipwreck. This isn't aged, it's marinated in centuries of ocean grime and fish disappointment. Imagine being the winning bidder. You don't put this on a cracker. You put it in a lead-lined box and warn your guests not to make direct eye contact. It's less of a gourmet item and more of a biohazard with a backstory. For that price, I'd expect it to at least grant me 3 wishes or sea-related superpowers, but it probably just smells of regret. 2. As a contender for the weirdest flex in history, one bidder proudly acquired a 15-foot-long preserved tapeworm showcased in a glass case. This isn't just a collectible, it's a social repellent. Forget showing off your coin collection. You just wheel this monstrosity into the living room and watch the party instantly clear out. It's the ultimate conversation ender. Any follow-up question like, "Where did you get it?" is immediately overshadowed by the more pressing question, "What is wrong with you?" It makes your grandpa's taxidermy squirrel look like a masterpiece of fine art. 3. Someone, somewhere, looked at their bank account and decided the best use of $5,500 was to buy a bag of sand. Not sand from the moon, just regular sand from a famous desert. You can literally get this stuff for free on any beach. What's the plan here? Do you display it on the mantelpiece and admire its sandiness? For that kind of money, the sand should at least be self-cleaning or whisper ancient secrets. Instead, it's just a bag of useless granules, serving as a monument to the fact that with the right marketing, you can sell anything. 4. In a bold move, someone paid $10,000 for a cloud. Not a piece of art depicting a cloud, but an actual cloud formation that, for a few seconds, vaguely resembled a dragon. How does this transaction even work? Do you get a deed for a specific parcel of the sky? Is there a cloud attorney involved? This has to be the worst investment in history, considering the asset probably dissipated before the credit card transaction even cleared. I'm thinking of selling the naming rights to the weird stain on my ceiling. It kind of looks like Abraham Lincoln if you're drunk. 5. While millions of pigeons are dodging traffic and providing unsolicited abstract art on statues for free, one specific bird was deemed worthy of a $35,000 price tag. And no, it wasn't a war hero or a genetically engineered super pigeon that could do your taxes. It was just a pigeon. For 35 grand, that bird better be able to deliver pizza and find my lost car keys. Instead, someone now owns the world's most expensive winged rat, a feathered symbol of having way too much money and not nearly enough common sense. 6. Just when you think humanity has reached peak absurdity, someone spends $35,000 on a handbag. A very special handbag, meticulously crafted from the taxidermied scrotum of a bull. Let me repeat that. Someone paid the price of a decent car for the privilege of carrying their belongings in a bull's former reproductive asset. This isn't just a fashion statement, it's a cry for help. It's an item that raises so many questions, none of which you ever want to hear the answers to. It's bold, I'll give it that. Boldly disturbing. 7. One history buff shelled out $32,500 for an authentic, 500-year-old medieval chastity belt. This isn't a replica, it's the real rusty deal, a piece of hardware designed with the sole purpose of preventing fun. Imagine explaining that to your friends. Check out my latest acquisition. It's a historical testament to paranoia and discomfort. It's less of an antique and more of a very expensive, tetanus-riddled monument to misery. You don't own a piece of history. You own history's most uncomfortable and least effective piece of underwear. 8. In a spectacular display of irony, a baseball signed by Fidel Castro sold for $250,000. The communist revolutionary who condemned capitalism became the face of one of its most ridiculous transactions. This is peak collectibles market logic. The ball itself is worth a few bucks, but add the signature of a dictator who hated everything it represents, and suddenly it's worth more than a house. The buyer doesn't just own a piece of sports memorabilia, they own a perfect spherical monument to historical contradiction. What a world. 9. For a mere $7,500, someone became the proud owner of a fully mummified fairy. It was, of course, a skillfully crafted taxidermy hoax, but that didn't stop a bidder from needing this tiny winged corpse in their life. This is the kind of decor that doesn't just tie the room together, it haunts it. It sits on your shelf, silently judging your life choices. This proves that there's a market for anything, as long as you call it mystical. Someone's childhood arts and crafts project involving a dead beetle and some glitter could have been a goldmine. 10. Proving that you can sell not just anything but also nothing, a company auctioned off a plot of land that didn't exist. It was a conceptual island in the middle of the ocean, and someone paid $15,000 for the ownership rights to literal water. Do they get a title deed to a set of coordinates? I have a desperate urge to know if the owner ever took a boat out to their property, pointed at the empty expanse of waves, and felt a deep sense of pride. It's the ultimate real estate flex. Owning property with zero risk of noisy neighbors. 11. I lose my house keys about 3 times a day, and I actually live here. Yet somehow, someone managed to preserve, track, and auction a single toothpick used by Charlie Chaplin for $7,500. How do you even begin to authenticate that? Is there a notarized affidavit from a piece of steak he ate in 1928? Did they run DNA tests? It's insanity. The person who bought this didn't just acquire a piece of memorabilia. They bought the world's most expensive splinter in a story they will have to tell with a very, very straight face for the rest of their lives. 12. Someone paid $2,000 for a bottle of water from Mount Everest. This wasn't some magical elixir that grants you eternal life. It was just water. H2O, the same stuff that falls from the sky for free. It won't make you a better climber, and it probably tastes exactly like the water from your tap, only with a much more arrogant price tag. This is a level of brand consciousness that is truly staggering. You're not just buying water, you're buying the right to tell people you drank $2,000 water. And they have the right to laugh at you. 13. A bidding war, which I can only assume was between 2 rival supervillains, broke out over a 150-year-old preserved human hand in a jar. The winning bid was $9,200. For the price of a reliable used car, someone now owns a floating, wrinkled, almost certainly cursed appendage. What do you do with this? Does it become a family heirloom? And to my dearest grandson, I leave my disembodied 19th century hand. It's a purchase that screams, I've run out of normal things to buy. 14. In a move that's either brilliant foresight or financial lunacy, one person spent $25,000 on a complete exorcist toolkit. It came with all the essentials, crucifixes, vials of holy water, and handwritten prayers, presumably for when things get really spicy. This is the ultimate gamble. If demons are just a myth, you've bought the world's most expensive and morbid Halloween costume. But if they're real, you just got the deal of a lifetime on home security. Either way, it's a hell of a conversation starter at your next neighborhood barbecue. 15. For anyone who has ever descended into madness while trying to assemble Swedish furniture, this one's for you. An unassembled IKEA chair sold for $65,000 because it was a rare collectible. Someone paid the price of a Porsche for a flat-packed box of particle board and that stupid little Allen wrench. They didn't even get a finished chair, just the opportunity to experience the rage and confusion of building it. This is not just furniture. This is performance art about the absurdity of consumerism, and the artist is laughing all the way to the bank. 16. We have reached a cultural singularity. Someone paid $10,000 for a potato. This potato's special quality? It was shaped, observers noted, like Kim Kardashian's backside. The fact that someone looked at a lumpy potato and made that connection is bizarre enough. The fact that someone else then paid a 5-figure sum for that potato is proof that our society is probably beyond saving. I can only hope they preserved it in resin, creating a timeless monument to the exact moment things went completely off the rails. 17. When a midlife crisis strikes, some men buy a Corvette. One man bought a decommissioned aircraft carrier. Yes, an entire warship, the size of a small town, with no jets, no guns, and an annual rust removal budget that could feed a village. Imagine the logistics. You can't just park this thing in your driveway. This is the ultimate go big or go home purchase. It's an obscene display of wealth that is both terrifying and you have to admit, deeply impressive in its sheer, magnificent stupidity. 18. Some people invest in stocks, others in real estate. And then there are those who invest in fossilized dinosaur poop. One such visionary spent $25,000 on what scientists call coprolite, but what everyone else calls a prehistoric turd. For the price of a new car, they became the proud owner of a 70-million-year-old piece of crap. You have to admire the guts it takes to show that off to friends. See this? A dinosaur made this, with its butt. It's the ultimate power move for the collector who has everything. 19. Proving that the art world has nothing on the fossil market, a 405-million-year-old trilobite fossil sold for $1.5 million. A trilobite, for the uninitiated, is basically an ancient armored sea bug. A prehistoric cockroach. Someone paid more for a fossilized insect than most people pay for a house with a swimming pool and a 3-car garage. This news makes me want to go into my garden, encase the first beetle I see in resin, and call it post-modernist neo-paleo art. The auction starts at $1 million. 20. At an auction specializing in things you definitely don't need, a single, preserved woolly mammoth leg sold for $100,000. Not the whole animal, just one leg. One giant, hairy, prehistoric limb. What is the plan for this? Does it become the world's most expensive and unsettling umbrella stand? Or is the owner now on a quest to find the other 3 legs, like some kind of millionaire's scavenger hunt for a DIY mammoth? This purchase doesn't say, "I'm a collector." It says, "I have a very specific and confusing hobby." 21. Someone thought it would be a great idea to buy a snow globe filled with actual volcanic ash. It sounds edgy and cool until you read the fine print. You can't shake it. The moment you do, the ash clouds the water, turning the whole thing into a gray, murky mess. So the buyer paid for a snow globe that must remain perfectly still, forever. They essentially bought a jar of sediment. It's a beautiful, expensive metaphor for a bad idea. It looks interesting at first, but the moment you play with it, it's ruined. 22. This one moves from the financial to the metaphysical. A man listed his own soul for sale, describing it as slightly used. But forget the seller for a moment. Let's talk about the buyer. What do you do with a purchased soul? Do you put it on a shelf next to your Funko Pops? Does it need to be fed? Does it come with an instruction manual? Imagine having to explain that at customs. Sir, do you have anything to declare? Yes, one moderately used human soul. It's the ultimate impulse buy with no clear purpose and presumably a very strict no-return policy. 23. When you've run out of tangible things to buy, why not move on to air? One person dropped $1,200 on a sealed jar of air from New Jersey. Not air from a historic moment, just regular New Jersey air. For that price, I sincerely hope it came with the authentic aroma of the Jersey Turnpike and a faint sound of Bruce Springsteen. This has inspired me. I'm now taking orders for artisanal Brooklyn air with notes of bodega coffee, subway brake dust, and shattered dreams. 24. In a story that's equal parts creepy and baffling, a pair of 19th century prosthetic glass eyeballs sold for $7,000. They didn't belong to anyone famous. They weren't made of a rare material. They were just 2 unsettlingly realistic glass orbs that once stared out from someone's skull. The new owner now possesses an artifact that's guaranteed to be the most uncomfortable item in their home. It's the perfect conversation piece, because the conversation is always, "Why, for the love of God, do you own that?" 25. Someone shelled out $31,000 for one of John Lennon's actual teeth. Not a guitar, not handwritten lyrics, but a piece of decaying enamel that was literally pulled from his mouth. I mean, where do you even display something like that? Personally, I draw the line at collecting someone's used body parts. What about you? Is there any celebrity whose dental records you'd mortgage your house for? For that kind of money, the Tooth Fairy should have left a luxury car and a signed apology note under the pillow. It's celebrity worship taken to a deeply unsettling biological level. 26. Ever had a moment of paranoia? Well, one person had a $30,000 moment of it. That's what they paid for a complete, fully stocked Cold War-era nuclear fallout shelter kit. It came with all the vintage essentials: a Geiger counter, canned food from the 1960s, and water purification tablets that probably expired before the moon landing. Talk about a bad investment. The Cold War ended, but the buyer is now the proud owner of the world's most expensive and depressing time capsule. The only thing it's good for now is a very specific, very sad-themed party. Crazy, right? 27. Prepare yourself for this one. A single piece of spaghetti, forever entombed in a block of clear resin, sold at an auction for $1,700. It was one lonely preserved noodle, just a noodle. A bidding war actually erupted between multiple people who decided this solitary carbohydrate was worth more than a month's rent. Why? Seriously, can someone explain this to me? Somewhere in Tuscany, a nonna is having a full-blown existential crisis over this single event. For that price, it better have been the most magnificent noodle ever boiled. 28. In what can only be described as a divine financial transaction, a 10-year-old grilled cheese sandwich, which allegedly had the face of the Virgin Mary burned onto it, sold for $28,000. Most sandwiches barely survive an afternoon, but this one achieved holy relic status. I have to ask, would you put this on your mantelpiece? For that price, you're not just buying a snack. You're buying a supposed miracle. It better be able to grant at least 3 wishes or turn tap water into premium wine. Otherwise, you've just spent a fortune on what is essentially sanctified 10-year-old mold. 29. Get this. The supposed first piece of chalk ever used in a classroom sold for $7,800. It was just a stick of compressed dust with a story attached. There's no certificate of authenticity, just faith. If we're auctioning off sentimental school supplies now, I feel like I missed a huge opportunity. I'm considering selling the first eraser I ever used. It's definitely seen some history, corrected countless tragic spelling errors, and carries the faint, nostalgic scent of desperation. Think of the value. 30. A single standard Lego brick fetched $2,000 at auction. Its claim to fame? It was briefly on the set of the Lego Movie. It wasn't a unique piece. It wasn't a special color. It was just one tiny, mass-produced plastic rectangle. Realizing this has made me reevaluate my entire childhood. That giant tub of Legos my parents gave away wasn't just a toy bin. It was apparently a treasure chest filled with tiny, colorful gold bars. Too bad it's now a landfill somewhere. The regret is real. 31. One collector paid $442,500 for a moon rock. Now, don't get me wrong, owning a piece of the moon is undeniably cool. But let's put it in perspective. You have paid the price of a luxury home for a pebble. Space gravel. Imagine trying to brag about that. Your friend says, "I just put a down payment on a yacht," and you counter with, "Neat, I got this rock." Even the moon is probably looking down thinking, "Really, dude? Of all the rocks up here, you paid that for that one?" 32. Here's a question for all the foodies. Would you pay $4,500 for a jar of pickles from the 1800s? Someone did. These aren't just old. These pickles have been fermenting in a jar for longer than the automobile has existed. They are, of course, completely inedible and would probably dissolve you from the inside out. This isn't a vintage delicacy. It's a historical bioweapon. If this is where the market is headed, I'm saving all my leftovers. That half-eaten jar of sauerkraut in my fridge is no longer food. It's a retirement plan. 33. A pair of Queen Victoria's underwear sold for $13,000. And let's be clear, we are not talking about some delicate silken lingerie. We are talking about full coverage, industrial strength, 19th century bloomers. I just can't imagine explaining this. You go bankrupt because you couldn't resist bidding on antique royal panties. Honestly, I think I just have to move to a new country and change my name. It's less embarrassing than admitting to your family that you lost your fortune on historical undergarments. Just, wow. 34. This one is genuinely baffling. Somebody spent $15,000 on a piece of bubblegum chewed by Britney Spears. Let that sink in. Chewed, saliva-infused. It was sold as a dried-up wad in a display case. What's worse here, the price tag, or the very idea of owning someone else's pre-masticated gum. I can just picture the owner, staring lovingly at this bizarre artifact and whispering, "It's Britney, beach." This isn't a collectible. It's a piece of evidence from a very strange crime scene. 35. When is a dead rat considered high art? When it's wearing a tiny, custom-made tuxedo and sells for $10,500. Yes, a taxidermied rat in formal wear. This is the kind of purchase that doesn't just say you're eccentric. It screams it from the rooftops. Imagine trying to justify this to your landlord. No, this isn't a pest problem, it's a statement piece. This rat has more style in his little finger than most people have in their entire body. It's truly a masterpiece of unnerving decor. 36. In a plot twist straight out of a dystopian novel, a couple sold the naming rights to their unborn baby for $5,000. Someone literally paid cash for the privilege of branding another human being. What kind of power is that to wield? You just know there was a moment of panic. Did they choose a normal name, or is there a kid walking around today named goldenpalace.com? This is what happens when capitalism and crowdfunding have a baby of their own. And it's terrifying. 37. Okay, forget tangible objects for a second. Someone paid $1,000 for 2 ghosts in a jar. According to the seller's description, the jars contain the spirits of an old man and a young girl. My first question isn't, are ghosts real? But how do you prove they're in there? Is there a tiny rattling sound? Did they have to get a special spectral shipping license? This isn't just a purchase, it's a leap of faith into pure, unadulterated absurdity. The buyer now has the eternal responsibility of caring for 2 glass-bound spirits. I hope they left a good review. 38. Someone paid $8,000 for a jar of dirt. Now, in its defense, it was allegedly dirt from the cemetery where Marilyn Monroe was buried, but at the end of the day, it's dirt. The same stuff you can get for free at any public park. Let's unpack this. You've essentially bought a handful of grave soil. This isn't just a quirky collectible. It's a conversation you're going to have with a therapist one day. I don't have attachment issues, Doc, but I do own some celebrity-adjacent topsoil. Totally normal. 39. Okay, horror fans, this one is for you. For $5,000, one brave soul bought a doll that was advertised as being genuinely cursed and known to move on its own. They didn't buy a toy, they paid for a haunting. They voluntarily invited a paranormal nightmare into their home for the price of a decent vacation. The buyer reportedly keeps it in a sealed glass case, which feels less like a display choice and more like a desperate containment measure. Good luck with that. 40. A tooth from a prehistoric megalodon shark, a fossilized remnant of an ancient apex predator, sold for a staggering $99,000. To be fair, it's an incredible piece of natural history. It's huge. It's terrifying. But let's apply some practical logic here. For nearly $100 grand, you could buy a very nice, very fast boat. You know, a vehicle specifically designed to help you escape from a modern shark. It's a classic case of admiring the problem instead of investing in the solution. 41. Just when you thought taxidermy couldn't get any weirder, someone spent $15,000 on a stuffed shark. A stuffed shark dressed in a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses. This is the kind of item that sits in your living room and makes guests question all of your life choices. It's the perfect pet. No feeding, no walking, just silent, unending judgment from a dead fish in vacation attire. It's not just decor, it's a lifestyle. A very, very questionable lifestyle. 42. If you thought cursed dolls were the peak of paranormal collectibles, allow me to introduce you to the haunted rubber duck. It sold for $107. According to the seller, the duck had the charming habit of turning its head to stare at you and was allegedly possessed by the friendly ghost of its previous owner. I don't know what's funnier, the idea of a haunted bath toy or the fact that over 40 people actually placed bids on it. Congratulations to the winner. I hope you enjoy your baths being personally supervised by a squeaky, demonic piece of plastic. 43. An American football, signed by a famous quarterback, sold for an astronomical $1.8 million. The catch? It was never used in a game. It's a pristine, untouched sphere of leather, valued precisely because it never fulfilled its destiny on the field. This is like buying a winning lottery ticket and then framing it instead of cashing it. It's not a piece of sports history. It's an incredibly expensive, leather-bound monument to pure, untapped potential. 44. A complete 19th century vampire hunting kit sold for $16,000. It came fully equipped with all the essentials: a wooden stake, vials for holy water, a crucifix, and even some old silver bullets. Because apparently, you have to be ready for anything. This purchase sits at the beautiful intersection of history, folklore, and extreme paranoia. Is the owner a history buff, a horror fanatic, or just genuinely convinced that their neighborhood has a vampire problem? Either way, I bet they sleep soundly. 45. Someone paid $1,350 for a single cornflake. Its extraordinary quality? It was shaped exactly like the state of Illinois. Can you imagine the discovery? You're just trying to eat breakfast, and suddenly you find a cartographical wonder in your bowl. For that price, you could have bought a plane ticket to Chicago and a lifetime supply of cereal. My whole breakfast strategy feels wrong now. At least if the owner ever goes broke, they have one very expensive, crunchy meal waiting for them. 46. This is just tragic. A used coffee cup from the set of the television show Friends sold for $11,000. It wasn't a pristine prop. It had visible lipstick smudges and old coffee stains. You didn't buy a piece of TV history. You bought someone else's dirty dish. You paid the price of a reliable car for evidence that one of the cast members was too famous to use the dishwasher. Let's just hope it wasn't Ross's cup. He probably licked the rim. Enjoy your overpriced garbage. 47. A single, unused sheet of toilet paper from the 1940s was auctioned for $1,500. Let's just pause and absorb that. It was not signed. It was not made of gold leaf. It was just a very old, very fragile piece of bathroom tissue. I have so many questions, and frankly, I'm afraid of the answers. For that price, it better have been woven by angels. The buyer didn't just acquire a weird collectible. They acquired the world's most expensive break glass in case of emergency supply. 48. A childhood doodle drawn by Donald Trump sold at auction for $2,500. It was a simplistic crayon scribble of the New York City skyline, the kind of drawing that thousands of kids make every single day. I can just picture a parent somewhere, cleaning out their kid's room and tossing a similar drawing, completely unaware they just threw away the equivalent of a down payment on a jet ski. Sorry, Timmy, your artistic genius could have paid off my student loans. 49. For $6,000, someone bought a brick. The catch? It might have been from the Great Wall of China. The key phrase here is might have been. There was absolutely no definitive proof. So, you're not paying for a historical artifact. You're paying for a story. A maybe. It's the historical equivalent of buying a vintage designer handbag from a sketchy website. It could be real, or it could just be a very expensive brick from a demolished Pizza Hut. That's a $6,000 gamble, made of clay. Alright, let's be honest. This list is a monument to bad decisions, but the impulse isn't entirely alien. So, here's the real question. What's the one thing you own that your kids will one day find and say, what were they thinking? Spill your most absurd collectible in the comments. I'm not here to judge much. If this video made you feel slightly better about your own financial choices, consider that a public service worth a like. And subscribe, because there's plenty more human absurdity where this came from.